I'm Jolanta Zaikauskienė, Global Medical Director, Dermatology at AbbVie. Today I'm representing Innovative Pharma Industry Association that unites 18 R&D companies in Lithuania, and I will be moderating today's event. Let me start with thank you to all organizers. First of all, EIT Health, University of Health Science Lithuania, Kaunas Clinics, Kaunas Technology University, and IFPA. The objective of today's event is to connect leaders from academia, from science, business law, and health politics for discussing value of data in fostering innovation in healthcare system in Lithuania. Unlocking data potential and secondary data use for the innovations in healthcare is overarching theme of previous morning health events, and we will continue this discussion today. This is not just about key powerful strategies area we have in this area, but also about mobilizing all key stakeholders for robust cross-sectoral dialogue to promoting data value and data sharing. Today, we will also have an opportunity to discuss our first-year experience, practice after implementation of the secondary data use law in Lithuania, and what opportunities it has opened for science, for clinicians, and for business. All those topics, I believe, will be properly addressed in the speakers' talks and discussion. But before I start event and introduce first presenter, I wanted to share some information, some facts and examples of data sharing initiatives across the globe. And what is the universal value of health data? When we talk about health data value, we estimate holistic benefits it could bring to patients, providers, payers, and pharma industry, and to which extent all those benefits could accelerate personalized care or precision medicine. And value is huge in healthcare when it is opened and shared. Value is starting with fundamental improvements on efficiency in healthcare and reduction of cost. Value predicting diseases and again providing better outcomes for the patients and all health care system stakeholders. And the next step, using innovative technologies equipped by artificial intelligence ability to prevent diseases in the future. When we talk about data value, and in general, when we mention this term value, we always think about finance. And we have been hearing different figures about data value. So, but there are some estimations, some calculations by different stakeholders, but it's more about estimation, and it would be hard to predict true value in figures. I am presenting a health study from NHS UK, and you can see figures on the slide. So starting with patient electronic medical data record, which is value of £100, and when it increases value when we talk about having phenotypic or genomic data, and then value is more than £1,500. But in order to increase this value constantly, there should be robust processes in place and systems for moving from siloed or raw value, raw data, to anonymized, longitudinal, and grouped value, group data by disease area, by phenotype, by demographics of patient, and also information on healthcare system setting. So partnerships combining genomic and phenotypic data, they are approximately, the starting value is more than £1,500 and up to £5,000 from any patient record. But when we talk about value, it's not only about figures. because in this health system as overall, we have different stakeholders, and each major stakeholder from across the system has different view on values. So when we talk about emerging needs of value, so when it comes to patient, HCP, so it's all healthcare provider, it's always about better diagnosis and treatment, improved patient safety, continuity of care, and improved efficiency. And when it comes to policymakers, to healthcare providers, to researchers and academia, of course, it's about better health policy, greater opportunities for research and innovation, fostering progress in healthcare. And the European Union is commissioned fostering new standards in opening data. The official portal initiated by European Commission currently holds data sets from 36 countries, and in total, more than 5 million data sets. Next initiative and estimated value of this initiative is European Health Data Space. I think you have heard about this. And depending on the baseline scenario, optimistic scenario, the value is reaching more than 300 billions in growing rates in estimated 10 years. And European Data Health Space is framework that provides legal and governance standards, quality of data standards, infrastructure, as well capability building for use of health data at primary level, so-called platform MyHealthEU, and as well it contains a platform for public or secondary data use, so-called Health Data EU. When it comes to public and private collaborations on data and sharing data, very nice initiative by European Health Data and Evidence Network, consisting of 11 partners, and aiming to provide common platform for data model and common data platform, connecting different stakeholders from European Union. So you can see that they are starting with hospitals, and we also have as a data partners registered in different cohorts, biobanks, and I'm proud to mention that Estonia is also data partner for ECDEN. Where we stand with data sharing initiatives in Lithuania. So I would be very positive about this because Lithuania is part of European public health sector data set, and Lithuania shares almost 2,000 data sets from various public sectors, including healthcare. And the recent report on performance of this portal, and where we have data for all 35 members, shows that an assessment was done in terms of policy of portal, impact and quality of the portal, and data opening. Lithuania moved from the 14th position to 13th position among 35 countries, and we are even outperformed such Western Europe advanced countries as Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Finland, and Sweden. A big progress forward in secondary data use in healthcare from healthcare was regulation last year on secondary data use, and this is a good framework which defines all process in place, and steps which are necessary, as well as guidance for applicants which are seeking to use healthcare data for secondary use for different purposes. There is permission needed from the Lithuania statistical departments, and from January 1st from Data State Agency. But this is like great step forward. And last year, one one-stop shop, so-called one-stop shop, managed 6 applications, and hopefully it will be different figures in 2023. I also wanted to introduce some initiatives which are going on and witnessing how our Lithuania health policymakers and also other stakeholders in driving progress in Lithuania. For example, Ministry of Health and Innovation are fostering advancements. And for example, very new project introduces 5 million donated for startups to create artificial intelligence for automation of robotic processes. Next great initiative by Ministry of Transportation and Communication is Sandbox, which is aimed to support, to promote innovation and to support development of digital solutions to require 5G connectivity. And again, funding allocated of 23.5 million euros. So overall, those were just few examples from the globe, from Europe mainly, and also we looking forward for more progress in Lithuania. And today, I believe, especially at discussion, we will cover all key capabilities are needed to unlock potential of data and to foster data sharing in Lithuania, not only in healthcare, but beyond. So key capabilities, I will not go through all of them, because in some areas we are we are having quite good standards. We are quite advanced. In some areas we need to sit together with all stakeholders to think about national strategy, to align together for common objectives, and to start data collaboration and data sharing. So thank you very much for this part and for active listening. And I believe that all those topics will be addressed by our today's speakers. And wanted to share one information that instead of 3 speakers, we will have 4 speakers, what is really great. We are happy that Niim Donison from Estonia Biobank joined us today, and we will be looking forward to listen to him. And now I wanted to introduce the first speaker, Dinid O'Brien, who is Head of Public and International Relations, Donate Your Data Foundation and Data Lake. So welcome, Dinid O'Brien, and we are looking to your talk.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for the invitation. I spoke last year at the event in Naples, and it was absolutely fascinating. And I really enjoy, it's not often you get to sit around with people who actually care about medical data. We're kind of a small group when it comes down to it. So very much looking forward to hearing also the other speakers talk, and thank you once again for the invitation. So I will share my screen, and please let me know when you are able to see it. Good to go? All right. All right, so today we're going to be talking, or I'm going to be talking about biobanks and data sharing in terms of how it is driving innovations in healthcare. To introduce myself and our organization, I work for the Donate Your Data Foundation in Poland, as well as Data Lake, which is a technological provider of services. We have built a coalition of now over 40 healthcare and patient organizations who are all supporting the idea of data altruism. So I know from my talk last year that there is some controversy, depending on the country, on the concept of data donation. But what we're really talking about is data altruism and using medical data for public good. So as I mentioned, we have around 40 healthcare and patient organizations. We are also, sorry, I'm having issues with my screen here. Let me just get rid of that. Perfect. We have on our network, as of right now, over 200 healthcare facilities, hospitals, clinics, biobanks, who have joined the data donation scheme. And currently in Poland alone, we are reaching about 25 million patients when it comes to data altruism education, as well as consent-based data altruism, which I will talk about in a second. So biobanks and data sharing. I think it's important to talk about what's at stake here, because we talk about these nebulous topics like data and research, but really what it comes down to is some very, very important implications for everyone around the globe. So I'm a bit of a medical futurist, and maybe it's a part of my age, but I've grown up in a really, really exciting time in the world when it comes to technological developments. And particularly, as I'm sure you all know, in the field of medicine, we are on the cusp of some incredible, let's say, sci-fi level advancements in terms of medical scanning, diagnosis, prescription and treatment technologies. And all of this is really happening through integrated data, or should be, let's say. Of course, unlocking cures and treatments, this is something that, we're all working towards, and we really are, as I said, on the cusp of having the potential to unlock cures and treatments for many, many diseases and improve treatments and patient outcomes. The success of artificial intelligence and machine learning in healthcare is at stake, and I cannot stress this enough. We talk a lot about at the Donate Your Data Foundation, bias in medical data, lack of representation, lack of women's healthcare research, the underrepresentation of minorities and other ethnic groups. And when you cannot trust the data, and when you have bias in the data, you have bias in the final product. And when it comes to patient and other stakeholder buy-in for artificial intelligence and the trust of these technologies to help them, we need to ensure that the data is unbiased, representative, and putting out fair and equitable technologies. And most importantly, saving million lives of years. This is really what's at stake. We talk a lot with patients. It's our primary stakeholder group that we're in discussions with on a daily basis. And it's very easy to forget when we're talking about data and sharing and biobanks and research that at the end of the day, we have patients' lives and their quality of life at stake. And this is really what we're talking about when we talk about data sharing. So the roles of biobanks. I apologize. I know we probably have some experts in the room, but let's talk briefly about the roles of biobanks when it comes to data. So of course we have genomic research, which is a huge application, and biobanks are a major source of genomic data. So there's the analysis of samples from biobanks to identify genetic variations associated with diseases, gene expression patterns, and investigating genetic basis of complex traits, for example. So as we probably know, this research is contributing significantly to understanding disease mechanisms, and very, very excitingly, as I'm sure you know, the developing of personalized medicine approaches and therapeutic targets and hyper-targeted therapeutics. The other role, of course, is epidemiological studies. After the COVID pandemic, maybe it's a little bit obvious, but this is something that is huge, looking at the risk factors, prevalence of diseases, and really it comes down to the generation of large data sets from biobanks, and not just the bio data that's being generated in-house in biobanks, but when we're talking, and I will mention it later, the interconnected data sets, being able to marry that bio data, the genetic data, as well as the electronic healthcare records and other large data analyses that are happening in other entities. This is really where we can see some incredible developments coming up here. So of course, biomarker discovery, this is a huge portion as well. Disease diagnosis, prognosis, prediction of treatment response. So the other thing, of course, that we have to remember is the ability to compare samples from healthy individuals and those with specific conditions, and importantly, identify molecular signatures and validating potential biomarkers for clinical use. And so, biobanks are playing a key role in that first data analysis that provides and informs researchers and of course, clinicians. This is going to be really, really huge. So we work a lot with startups that are working on AI algorithms, which I'll also discuss later. And as you can imagine, biomarkers are a huge, huge part of that. And the more data that is being generated in that field, the better the outcome when it comes to the algorithms. Of course, drug discovery is a big part of this, and I hope you're all ready for a new era of personalized medicine because we're really on the cusp. We have some very exciting developments coming up in terms of personalized medicine, drug printing, and nomics-based treatments, and this is really going to revolutionize, in my opinion, healthcare going into the future. And then, of course, translational research, this is really, really important, and that is bridging the gap between, let's say, the basic research and clinical applications, and translating lab studies and biobanking data into clinical practice. This is what biobanks are doing, and facilitating the validation of biomarkers, as I said, developing diagnostic tests, etc. So I know I'm going through this quite quickly, but I also don't want to take up too much of the time in the basics, but the role of biobanks is crucial, and they are generating vast amounts of data. This data is the foundation. It's fundamental to the developments that we're seeing in medicine. And I will talk a little bit about some of the exciting things that we're seeing in terms of innovations and developments. But it is all based upon data. And as I mentioned, I'm sure most people in the room are quite familiar with the importance of data, and it's nice to be amongst friends when it comes to medical data. So there's one major issue right now that has been a problem for quite a long time, and you may be familiar. It's called data hugging, and this is the practice of withholding samples or data. It's been talked about for, I think, at least a decade, if not two, and it seems to be a perennial and pervasive problem that we still encounter for various reasons. So I'd like to take a look at some of those reasons, and not exhaustively because there are a lot, but just the top level ones. So we have human reasons for data hugging. There is this natural human reluctance to share. It's all baked into us. I mean, we're hopefully taught as young children to share and be kind to others, but unfortunately that's not the case. And another really important human driving factor is the desire for recognition, and that can be at the individual level of researchers working and people working in biobanks. It can be, of course, at the directional level, and to be honest, it also goes all the way to the country level, where certain entities or certain people in certain countries want to have the recognition for research developments and discoveries. Of course, a huge issue is also financial and the reasons for data hugging. As has been discussed and presented just before me, there is an increasing value to data, and we're hearing the term in the industry, data is the new oil, and unfortunately it is the truth. And with that comes all of the implications of what a highly prized resource can bring. There's also an issue, of course, with competition for funding, which poses many issues, not just for biobanks, also for researchers, also for universities and other entities. So this is a perennial problem that we're seeing. Of course, there's ethical reasons for data hugging. There's a commitment to patients. This is on, let's say, the brighter, the more human side of things, that there is a commitment to patients to protect their data. And researchers and biobanks feel, and rightly so, that they have been entrusted with a person's data, a person's biological samples, their genetic data, and particularly when it comes to genetic data, as we know, it is our most sensitive data set. And so there is this natural tendency to feel protective over the data. And going back to the human element, this reluctance to share is not all selfishness at all. Many times it's actually an ethical reluctance to share, which, we encourage, but of course it poses a stumbling block to innovation. And that's something that we're at the Donate Your Data Foundation trying to help solve. Of course, there's also a lack of consent. We have, as you may be aware, the Data Governance Act, which is going into force later this year, which provides the framework for consent-based data altruism for research purposes. That said, it's one of the few cases that I'm aware of where the legislation is actually ahead of society in terms of consent specifically. And then finally, there's institutional reasons for data hugging. I touched a little bit on that in the human area, but data, and particularly nomics data, is becoming more and more considered as a strategic interest and a national resource. And as with any strategic interest and national resource, when it comes to governments, they tend to be quite protective and quite cautious. Now, thankfully, I consider myself European. I may sound American. I apologize for that. I'm actually English-Italian, grew up in Brussels, and all of my family, apart from one, have worked either in the Parliament or the Commission. And I'm very thankful that we live in Europe and encouraged by the sharing and this desire for sharing that we have in Europe, as well as the push from legislative bodies to create the legislation necessary for sharing. That said, when we look at the global scale, it's not as optimistic, let's say. So we have this issue of data hugging, and of course, there's plenty of other issues. We would need a few hours to go over them all. But we actually, at the Donate Your Data Foundation, really believe that we do have a solution for all of these. The solution for us starts with patient education. We are running right now as a foundation education campaigns across Poland using media, working directly in hospitals with a physical presence, working with educators, working with actual healthcare providers and doctors to educate patients about data. And this is really, really key for me. And to be frank, looking at some of the previous approaches and some of the other legislation, which kind of skips over consent and just says, well, it's more important that we have innovation. We truly believe that you can have consent, privacy, and innovation. And so our solution that we believe operates on consent, agency, and privacy when it comes to patients. We believe that the innovation that is going to come out, the data-driven innovation that's going to come out, particularly in biobanks, but also across the board when it comes to healthcare data, it requires consent from patients. It requires giving them agency over their data, and it requires ensuring their privacy. And when you have all of those three elements in place, we're actually seeing a huge uptake and a huge interest from patients when it comes to their medical data for the purposes of innovation. Finally, we believe that the solution to this is by aligning stakeholder interests, and I was really pleased to see on that last slide before I started talking that aligning stakeholder interests was part of that, and we really believe that there is a solution here to innovation based on data sharing by aligning stakeholder interests. And I don't want to get too much into the Data Governance Act and European health data space, but to be frank, one of the parts that have disappointed me personally in our organization was the decision to not allow patients to benefit tangibly from their medical data. To be frank, we think that's a mistake. When we look at the amount of money, the billions and billions, hundreds of billions of euros that represents a medical data economy in Europe, and we look at the traditional stakeholders and large companies who stand to gain the most from this, we think that cutting out patients from generating their own data is a mistake. And in fact, in Italy and in Austria, the lower courts have already ruled that citizens can monetize their own data and can actually benefit from it. So we're actually hopeful that maybe that will shift over time. Obviously, there are very important safeguards that need to be in place. However, for us personally, we feel that there is actually a solution to that. And another element for aligning stakeholder interests is also ensuring that those who are providing the data are benefiting as well from the medical data economy. So, when we look at hundreds of billions of euros per year and a growing market, we feel as though there's enough money to go around when it comes to the medical data economy. And we think that the solution really involves aligning stakeholder interests and rewarding all stakeholders for participating in data sharing and the innovations that come from it. So as I mentioned, we're working directly with patients primarily, and the idea of data sharing and consent-based data sharing brings up a few questions that I'd just like to talk about briefly. So first of all, do patients want to participate in data altruism? And in our experience, the answer is absolutely yes. So when we started our foundation, we were reading Eurobarometer data, and to be frank, depending on the country, the range of willingness to share their medical data for research goes from about 20 to 30% of the population up to the upper 90s in Scandinavia, for example. For us working in Poland, we began our journey thinking that we would be looking at 20 to 30% because Eurobarometer and other data is showing that range for Poland. We've actually found that through proper education campaigns and working directly with healthcare providers, we have maybe between 8 and 9 out of 10 patients who are willing to participate in medical data altruism and to share their data and give consent to share their data for research purposes, which for me is extremely promising and makes me hopeful for what could be created. Another question that comes up a lot is, can patients be sufficiently educated to provide consent? And I know there are discussions, legitimate discussions regarding informed consent and whether it is possible to educate patients enough to be able to give their truly informed consent. But to be honest, it's not a question I really love because I think it underestimates the intelligence and ability of patients to understand, and specifically about privacy. So I know I look relatively young, but I am starting to get a few gray hairs. And I've been in the privacy community for, I think, about 15, 18 years now. When I started paying attention to this concept of privacy, it was in the realm of conspiracy theory in terms of the general public opinion. And people just thought, this is crazy that you think that governments are collecting and analyzing your data. You can imagine I felt maybe a little bit vindicated with the Edward Snowden leaks regarding the intelligence agency's collection of data, as well as the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal, who one of those whistleblowers is a colleague and friend of mine. And that has really, really changed the public discourse and the public understanding of what privacy means when it comes to their data. Of course, GDPR has helped enormously. And these subsequent legislations that are coming out, such as the Data Governance Act, are only building public awareness. So this may not seem directly related to biodata, but as I mentioned, when we talk about genomic data, it is our most personal data set. And with companies like Google entering the medical data space, and for example, being asked by state level authorities in the United States for geolocation data of women who visit abortion clinics, the element of the issue of privacy is absolutely fundamental when it comes to biobanks, data sharing, and innovation. Without it, this all goes away. We need public buy-in, we need public support, we need public trust. They need to be able to trust that their data is not going to black box algorithms somewhere. It's not being sucked up by their healthcare provider or their healthcare insurers, for example, that it's not being used by tobacco companies to engineer more addictive products. These are things that have come up in our discussions with patients, and they are absolutely critical. So this is why, we talk about privacy a lot. And actually, when you look at the data in almost every single country polled, the concern of privacy is growing steadily and increasingly every single year. And I believe there was a World Economic Forum study a couple of years ago that showed, on average, of the largest global Western economies, 75% of people or more said they had concern or serious concern about their data privacy. So we've gone from the fringe realm of, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, to actually people saying, 80% of people in some countries saying this is a serious concern. And if we want innovation, especially innovation coming from biobanks, we truly, truly need privacy as a core fundamental part. So I want to just talk a little bit about some of the current innovations that are happening. So of course, as we know, AI is a big topic right now, and I just want to be very clear, we don't actually have artificial intelligence yet. We have complex algorithms, we have some very smart programming. We do not have artificial intelligence in its true form yet, but it is coming. And of course, the data is really, as I mentioned, what drives all of these innovations. We have AI algorithms, we have machine learning, we have predictive algorithms that are really making a huge difference already in patient outcomes by early prediction of diseases. We have robotics and AI-driven robotics, such as the Da Vinci robot, which I had the opportunity to test last year. And it's absolutely incredible what's happening. When you add that on top of VR, virtual reality, and augmented reality technologies, we're really talking about a sci-fi level of innovation coming in the next few years. There's also, there's how to put it, when you put all of this together, right, we have all of these different technologies, 3D printed drugs, machine learning happening on scans. You put all of this together, and we really have this, if anyone has watched it, Star Trek level or sci-fi level of all encompassing, all inclusive medical diagnosis and treatment, all aided by machines, all aided by algorithms. And as mentioned, this is all fundamentally built upon data. The other thing, of course, when it comes to the data that's driving innovation is, as you may be aware of, I'm sure, ChatGPT as an AI, which again, is not real AI, but these LLMs are really very, very interesting. I don't think they're going to be replacing doctors anytime soon. That said, when you look at the increase in digital healthcare provision, you look at things like the pandemic, for example, I think maybe for people who are in my generation and older, they're not quite comfortable yet with robot doctors, with digital avatars and AI-driven voices. But when I talk to younger people, this is actually something that they're not so concerned about. We're talking a lot in the medical community about losing this human element, but the truly 100% digital generation, those who don't remember before the internet, like perhaps we do, they have a lot less concern about these things. So we are seeing, even from a sociological and from an evolutionary standpoint, rapid changes in younger generations, a more openness to technologies, and I think more and greater acceptance that data plays a huge part of it, and there's a big recognition of that. But I want to share some of the innovations, some of the things we're also working on at the Donate Your Data Foundation that are specifically driven by data, that are maybe a little bit more specific. So one of them is universal digital consent and digital consent management systems. Basically, what these are technologies that allow people to give consent to the use of their data remotely, digitally, and in a secure way. And I believe blockchain technology was mentioned a little bit ago. And our system actually uses blockchain technology to record de-identified instances of consent on the blockchain. And why this is important, again, it comes down to trust and transparency and openness. We, even as a foundation and as a controller of data of patients, we don't want people to have to trust us. I personally don't want to have to trust a private company that my consent or my medical data is being used in a correct way. I don't want to have to trust that when I say don't use my data, it's not being used. And this is why, for us personally, we chose blockchain technology as an open and transparent way to be able to record consent or the revocation of consent on the blockchain. And the system that we're actually building has various validator nodes, which are, let's say, third-party organizations that can validate the information as true. And as I mentioned before, we have almost 40 patient and healthcare organizations on board. And what we're actually creating a system is where if someone gives consent through a digital tool, a patient organization that is completely independent from this system, a neutral third party, can say, yes, I verify this information or I don't. We don't have to trust companies. We don't have to trust private industry. And that's really something that for us is quite exciting. So universal digital consent is patient-centric. It is based upon the predication that we believe that patients should be giving or revoking consent to the use of their data. And we are finding that this is absolutely key for adoption. And we were in talks both with DG Santé and DG Connect in Brussels and in Luxembourg about this. And on the one hand, we had DG Connect that helps write the Data Governance Act. And on the other hand, we had DG Santé, who obviously were very instrumental in the European health data space. And the issue of consent came up, and to be frank, they were very honest with us. And they said, yes, the European health data space creates many conditions in which research can be done without consent. And we recognize that this is actually going to be potentially a problem for patients and for those who are giving their data. And so having recognized that, obviously I'm fully behind medical innovation. I think it's important. I think it will save lives. But we are finding on the ground, talking to patients, and those who have submitted to their data to submitted their samples to biobanks and the associated genetic and other genomic data that's created from that, they are telling us, I want to be able to give consent for that to be used. And to be honest, we fully understand that. Universal digital consent systems also have privacy by default. I won't reiterate why privacy is important, but for us, it's absolutely foundational to the success of innovation. Universal digital consent is compliant with EU legislation. As I mentioned, the Data Governance Act provides the legislative framework to be able to have the medical innovation that we want, and consent is a major part of that. And finally, it solves the issue of portability. So this is my dream for me personally. I want every European and obviously global, but as a European, this is my biggest dream, is to have a European system where everyone can either give consent and permission for the use of their data or not. And I'm not just talking about medical data, I'm talking about all of our data. This would allow for an interoperable system across Europe where any entity, we're talking about these national level initiatives, and they are absolutely amazing. What I want to see is actually a pan-European network of consent, which allows any entity, any research entity, as long as it's pro-patient, as long as it's for public good, to be able to use people's data with their permission. And this is a huge issue, of course, as well as the portability of medical data, which the Commission has been talking about for years now, and we're moving towards solutions here. But for me, being able to say, yes, I consent to the use of my data, and this is a European-wide consent, is absolutely going to be driving innovation and has the potential to. So then another, let's say, more specific innovation when it comes to biobanks and data sharing, and this one is super, super exciting, are open digital patient registries. These are patient-centric models, and they are digital registries that honestly can be segmented based on any number of parameters. They allow for longitudinal data, which of course is very, very important. And it also allows for multi-source data such as electronic healthcare records, multi-omics, biodata. So basically what we're talking about is a registry that could be used for any legitimate research purposes. And one of the major issues that we're also running into when it comes to genomic data and other omics, which you may or may not be aware of, but they are absolutely enormous. We're talking about gigabytes of data per person. And the transport of that is obviously problematic from a technological standpoint. But also when we talk about centralization of data, there are some real concerns when it comes to, for example, hacking. And we're not just talking, some guys sitting behind their keyboard. I'm also talking about state level hacking. There are countries that would be absolutely very interested in having access to a repository with all of the omics data of European citizens, and that is just a fact. So what digital patient registries allow, and I believe federated learning was also, for federated models was mentioned, it allows for a distributed, decentralized, federalized network, which still contributes, let's say, the final outputs to a centrally accessible patient registry without transporting all the data into one centralized location. And this is actually what we're doing right now when it comes to consent-based medical access in Poland. We're not holding any data. We don't have a giant data bank full of data that we're keeping in a cloud somewhere or on a server. What actually is happening is more of a federated approach where on demand the researchers can be brought to the data and given access to the data en situ. And obviously there are technological and privacy concerns when we have multiple distributed data banks. But for me, the greater risk is having everything in one place. So this federated approach allows for multi-source data. It allows for us to connect to biobanks, to hospitals, to researchers, to pharmacies, for example, and as well as to things like wearables and other things. And it allows for this longitudinal multi-source data to be pouring in to allow researchers to do some incredible research. And of course, this big data research, it grows exponentially. So biobanks have huge data repositories just by the nature of the research and the analyses that they're doing. But when you expand that out to a national and even pan-European level, we're talking about huge possibilities when it comes to large data analytics on large and varied data sets. And one thing.
Sorry,
yes.
Sorry, I'm afraid your time is out.
Okay.
It's already one. So very informative, very inspiring talk. If you could finish, wrap up in 1 minute or two, so because next speaker is already prepared.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So that was actually my last slide. So that is a good thing. The last thing I just wanted to say is that patient registries are amazing for patient engagement, patient centricity. Patients want to be involved in their healthcare. And all that to say, I really believe you cannot extricate patients from the data that they're generating. And I think a patient-centric approach to data sharing, especially when it comes to biobanks and our genomic data, is the only way to go. So thank you very much. I apologize that I went a little bit over, and very much appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much again. Okay, so if there are some questions on chat, so we will most probably address them later. But now I would like to invite our next presenter, Rita Campos, the largest technology founder and startup community of F6S EU project manager. So,
hi. Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I was here super inspired by the previous talk. and it's giving me life, and we're super aligned with some of the things. So my presentation is a little bit different. I will, so as said, I'm a project manager at F6S. We're a community of startups, and we try to deliver opportunities to startups. In this sense, we participate in some European projects, and I've come to talk to you a little bit about COVIDx, a project that was funded under the COVID calls that the European Union had right in the beginning of the pandemic. And so we all know and remember what the pandemic brought us and how it hit us hard with a lot of that, not only in Europe, but around the world. And there were considerable, at the time, also appearing everywhere, a lot of technology breakthroughs and a lot of data being generated and collected. And so the purpose of COVIDx, this project, how it started and the idea that it brought was to bridge this data divide. So how could we connect technology providers, particularly startups and SMEs that had a bunch of ideas on how to support the healthcare sector and users and patients, and the healthcare providers that were collecting a lot of data that could be used and exploited somehow to provide better healthcare for everyone. So this was the motivation or the vision that we had initially. And then our mission was to boost the validation of a bunch of tools and solutions in Europe that could be accelerated to the market, could be validated to help us in the midst of the pandemic. So this was right in the eye of the hurricane. So we designed this program, and it was accepted and funded, that we would identify ideas, and we had a chunk of budget to manage to open calls in a scheme of cascade funding to fund SMEs and startups that wanted to validate digital solutions for healthcare. But on the same time, we were also developing, in the scope of the project, the team of the project developing a tool, a platform to support these technologies. And the idea or the dream was to have this data lake and this infrastructure to support data share and growth of everyone together. So again, this was our mission and what we set out to do. So this was a project, as I said, funded into this topic. It was an innovation action, and it ran from November of 2020 until October of 2022. So we just wrapped up everything in the end of last year. So these were 2 very intensive years of trying to support startups and SMEs developing digital healthcare solutions in the midst of the pandemic, with lockdowns and hospitals being pressured. So it was quite a ride. The project had a total cost of almost 8 million, funding a little bit below that because it was an innovation action, and we dedicated around 4 million to supporting these SMEs and startups. So just a little bit about our road and our journey during these 2 years and what we did. So the project produced a set of results in addition to supporting these SMEs and startups. So we elaborated or provided an ethical and legal framework because we were looking for ways to support these startups and SMEs, not only with funding, but what else we could do for them. So we elaborated this ethical and legal framework to support them. We also did an overview and sat down with the SMEs and other stakeholders to try to elaborate some policy recommendations to facilitate the adoption of these solutions. We developed this sandbox, so this playground for technical providers to have access to some common infrastructure to deal with data. We managed to open calls, and then we ran this acceleration program to support 29 data-driven solutions in Europe. So just very quickly, because that's not the main focus, but to try to understand how we were supporting these startups and SMEs. So this ethical and legal framework had these privacy by design and by default framework. So we educated the SMEs and startups on privacy, on security, provided them with anonymization guides, with protocols to ensure that their solutions were being developed in a proper way, in a suitable way to be adopted by healthcare stakeholders. We also supported them in ethical aspects because these 29 solutions, so 6 of them ran retrospective studies, but 23 of them ran clinical studies, prospective studies with data collection during this period. So we supported them in getting consent, in getting the approval from the ethical committees of the hospitals they were working on. So we advised them and support them throughout that process, and also elaborated a data security protocol and enable them to ensure that everything was being done in a trustful and secure way. So this anonymization guide was developed to support these startups and SMEs. It was developed as a tool. It had we had webinars to educate them, and it covered best practices to help the companies. Not going into the detail, but we also supported companies in doing this privacy impact assessment, so working with hospitals to facilitate and understand the process and adopt techniques to ensure that the solutions that they were developing were really ready to be adopted in not only in a technical way, but in a secure and useful way for the stakeholders. In terms of policy recommendations, we did this analysis of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in technology in the medical domain, and try to understand what were the main legal challenges faced by our startups, and try to come up with a set of recommendations. So some of the things, or the main barriers that we identify, was that a lot of startups were already players in the domain, but they had a lot of issues in understanding and interpreting the medical device regulation. Not all of them were aware that they would fall into this regulation, even just developing software. During the pandemic, there was an incredible shortage of notified bodies, so it was quite difficult and quite lengthy to obtain this medical certification because there was a lot of lookout for this. And Europe, we are an amazing continent and an amazing group of very diverse group of countries, but this lends into a fragmented regulations locally, regionally, and nationally. And in the case of the pandemic, there were very different reimbursement paths. Also hindering the adoption of the same solution in several regions or in several countries. So our sandbox, our technical infrastructure, wanted to handle several healthcare data sources and offer multiple services to these companies so that they could focus on their main core technology or what they were really doing. Some of them were developing tools to help diagnosis. So all of them were data-driven solutions using AI or machine learning. So to support diagnosis in interpreting images, to support long-term recovery at home. So there was a very wide variety of solutions, but we wanted to provide an infrastructure with security, with services for data visualization, for data management, for data harmonization. And this was developed by a group of research partners within the consortium and made available to all of these SMEs and startups. And in addition to these, because if you remember, the dream was that this platform, this sandbox would allow them to share data. We also developed this semantic data model that could be used, and that was used by the 29 solutions to facilitate some exchange and some interoperability of data that would be very, very important. In addition to that, the main objective was that this sandbox had a federated learning ability. And these, for anyone that kind of works in artificial intelligence, these would allow that anyone that has a machine learning, an AI model, could train their model with data from different nodes. So we wouldn't need to centralize the data, but we could mine data from different nodes to train a specific algorithm. So this allows any startup that is developing a machine learning model and that has limited access to data to actually improve and train and validate their algorithms with data nodes accessible in several other places. So federated learning moves the computation to data, accelerates the ability to train these algorithms, and one server, so our sandbox, could connect to several data sources and interact directly with the data by making this connection. So there is no centralized data. So all of these was developed, not necessarily used as we wanted, but I will come to that. So then we had an acceleration program where we provided financial support, of course. So each startup received 100,000 euros. The hospitals working with us received 50,000 euros. They all ran a 9-month program where they did the technical development, the study to validate their solution, and then they had access to this technical infrastructure and to our acceleration program with business mentoring and so on. So we call them our game changers because they were using data to really bring value to patients and to stakeholders in the healthcare domain. As I was saying, they worked in several challenges or several areas, covering from early detection of COVID to recovery, so the whole spectrum. And because when we ended the project, COVID was kind of going down, we also worked with them in repurposing or understanding how their solutions would still be useful, very useful in the healthcare domain, in other areas, other diseases, for other purposes. And almost all of them were going already into that direction. So this is a selection of, we had more than 100 applications in the 2 open calls, and from them we had 29 solutions. So 29 SMEs, European SMEs, 23 European hospitals, plus 3 hospitals that were part of the COVIDx team. CERMAS in Spain, the Public Service in Madrid, Karolinska Institute in Sweden, and Humanitas in Italy. All of them working together to involving patients and doctors and data sets to validate these solutions. So what was our main impact during these 2 years? So we developed this sandbox that was deployed into a server. Some of the solutions used our central server. Some of them had their own version of the sandbox. For example, our 3 hospitals had, because they were dealing with different technical providers. And this was used by 29 SMEs. So from the 29, 28 finished the program and really tested the solution. One of them had some struggles with obtaining devices that came from other countries from outside Europe and couldn't finish the program. But it was, again, a challenge from the pandemic. And we achieved a very powerful network of game changers. So these 29 startups plus the 26 hospitals that worked with them. But the sandbox was not really used as we wanted to be. So what was really good, the 29 companies could really work on their models. As I said, 28 of them could validate the models and collect information on usability of the solution from doctors and patients. So they really validated their product and they were ready. Some of them achieved the certification. All of them were on the path to achieve this certification. They also learned on how to have a structured approach to do clinical studies and validate their product and accelerate it to the market. But not everything was smooth sailing, as I was saying. So we had some challenges. So one, as I said, was this fragmented European market. If a solution or a company wanted to move to another country, the reimbursement scheme was the same. Things were running a little bit different, and this was hard. The second one was about certification. So all of them were expected to achieve certification. There was very long queues for to get access to notifying bodies and support for these. So some of them couldn't do it until the end of the program, but all of them were on track to do it. One of the main challenges that we had, if we think of the more mentoring part of the program, was that some of the technology providers, and remember that we are talking about startups and SMEs in Europe, had trouble differentiating the user from the customer. So some of them were doing solutions for the patient directly to use at home in recovery, for example. Some of them were doing diagnostics tools to be used by doctors. So these were the users of the tool, but the customers were either the hospital management, so the entity making the decision to adopt the technology and pay for it is different from the user. And we had to kind of educate and do this process with some of our startups. And then exactly because of this fragmented market, we also challenged our startups to think about collaborating with each other instead of competing with each other. And these happened quite beautifully, I have to say, and some of them created really strong collaborations to tackle market in 2 different countries together instead of competing in these 2 different countries. So this was very good to see. What also didn't go very well or didn't go as we wanted was that all of these 29 startups injected data into our sandbox. However, the data stayed in individual silos because this was the result of studies being done by the project during the project. And these companies were running a 9-month project. So imagine in the first 3 months, they were validating the algorithm and getting ethical approval from the hospital. The second period of 3 months, they were collecting data from patients and training their models with real data. And in the final sprint of 3 months, they were validating getting feedback from the users and validating the solution as a whole, and coming up with a sustainability and business plan to commercialize it afterwards. So this was like a very fast-paced project, very challenging, and the ethical approval guaranteed by all of them with the hospitals they were working with was only for the purpose of their validation. So we struggled in extending that to be able to share data among themselves and really use the sandbox as it was designed or envisioned by us. So the technical infrastructure was there, but in reality, we didn't achieve that of enabling them to share these data sets that they were collecting. But in the end, one thing is true. All of these was about data and the power that the data brought, the ability that it brought for them to have the possibility of doing this study for just a 9-month period and have the necessary validation and training to obtain certification and bring the solution to the market and to other stakeholders. So data for what? In this case, for these startups or these SMEs, what does it mean? It means having access to real data to train their algorithms, to validate their solution. So interaction with stakeholders who would use their solution and tell them this is useful and not, to be able to perform these clinical studies, to again collect more data and advance the technology readiness level of their solution so that they are ready and useful to come to the market. And they need all these to obtain medical certification to guarantee they can provide the service they want to all of us in Europe. So what do I think, or what we think from COVIDx, what we learned that we need to change these and to be able to facilitate and expand these for other companies. So we definitely need education, and some of this is very aligned to the previous speaker. Education on what is data, how it will be used, how we can donate it, who are all the stakeholders involved. This is not only for educating the patients about these, but also educating the medical stakeholders, so doctors and nurses, on how technology can help them. We also saw them some more skeptic that they would, was the technology really serving them, or were they serving the technology? So education all around is needed on how data can facilitate these and add value to all of us, and not just to some of us from a financial perspective as well, as it was also mentioned. When we think of AI and machine learning, there is also an issue in defining the ownership of data if it's not just out there. If we're not talking yet about data altruism, there is a very blurred boundary, because we collect data to train an algorithm, but the data kind of changes the algorithm in the sense that we have a better algorithm after it is trained. So the ownership of the algorithm and the data is kind of fuzzy between the data collector, the data processor, the algorithm owner. So this needs to be discussed openly as well. Of course, if data is open and shared in a secure way, this becomes less relevant or less of a barrier to the adoption. And then having the infrastructure, which we try to start with our sandbox, to have relevant, unbiased, secure data, anonymized data, so that everyone feels there's a trusted and secure environment, and really data is not a business, but an added value for all of us. And this requires as well a framework, a legal and ethical framework. So we have now the Data Governance Act, but I feel there's still a very, very long way to be done if we consider of all the countries in Europe, all the regions, private and public healthcare, everyone that is operating. We need to have a very clear framework. And again, going back to education, explaining this to all the citizens and all the stakeholders involved. And this requires strategic European collaboration. So it is definitely not possible that we do something in Lisbon and in Portugal. The public healthcare sector has the ability, I can go online and see when my health data record was accessed and by whom. So I can see the name of the doctor or nurse or technician that accessed my health data record and when and for what purpose. Was it in a medical consultation or an exam or something like that? But this is my case in Portugal, and it's only for the public sector, not for the private sector. So there's this whole fragmentation can only be tackled if we go into really strategic European collaboration of a higher value. And I think this higher value is just considering that data has the power to give us more and better technology. And this more and better technology can really mean a better healthcare for all of us. So it can help the doctors and nurses in treating us better, faster, so really serving them, not the other way around. And we can all benefit from having better healthcare and ultimately actually better health for all of us. So the COVIDx team had partners in several countries in Europe, 3 healthcare providers, as I said. Intrasoft and University Polytechnic at Madrid were doing technical development, and 8 Bells in Cyprus. And then Bosonit was doing, and Civita were doing the mentoring program, and F6S and Austral were supporting the program. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Rita, for the great presentation. And we have 3 questions from the group online. So question 1 is, what patient data are owned by the patient?
So in this case, in COVIDx, as I said, we were talking about 29 clinical studies. So 6 of the clinical studies were done with retrospective data. So these were data sets owned by the hospitals that were part of the COVIDx consortium. Data sets collected in the beginning of the pandemic. And the hospital owns these data sets and they had their own sandboxes where the data sets were hosted. And they were collected using proper consent forms from the patients. In Humanitas, these were just imaging. And the other 23 were clinical studies prospective clinical studies during the time. So the patients still own their data and signed consent form that this data would be used to validate this solution in this specific period. So it was a very narrow consent form, and the data was fully anonymized. So our sandbox didn't allow injection of any data that was not fully anonymized, and all the companies had to provide a certificate to prove this. But ultimately, the patients remained the owners of their own data, or the healthcare providers that they were seeing.
Okay, thank you for this comprehensive answer. And now, next one. What is the size and teams of data sets available for data altruism platform?
So in our case, as I said, we had a lot of data injected, although the data was used only by the technology provider, by the same provider of the data. But we had anything from studies done with 10, 12 patients to collection of several hundred data from several hundred patients or doctors. It depended a lot on the solution and the study being done.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rita. And the last one, which is from, again, very, very interesting, but I hope that because due to lack of time, you will answer it quickly, because the question is about COVID-19 outcomes, such as guidelines or recommendations opened for interest parties.
Definitely. So I invite you to take a look at the website of the project, covid-x.eu. I can put it on the chat. You can get access to most of these outcomes are public. And if not, I'm always free. You can reach out to me and I'm happy to provide more information.
Thank you so much for your answers, and thank you very much for your openness and accessibility. And if more questions, so we could reach out to you. And
yes.
Now, thank you very much. And now I wanted to introduce okay, so and we had two questions for our previous speaker, Denid. So Denid, maybe you could answer, because I saw that you answered some questions on chat, but maybe I could ask you to comment about this particular one. Could blockchain technology can provide a mechanism to reward individuals who share the data in addition to voluntary sharing?
Yeah, so absolutely. I'll answer very quickly. The answer is yes. So without getting too into the technical details, what you can do with blockchain technology is something called smart contracts. And these are a way to automate various mechanisms, including reward mechanisms. And what you would be able to in that case is allow for an automated process in which when a person's data is shared, they could automatically be rewarded for that. And as Europe and the European Central Bank moves towards potentially a digital euro, what we could actually see is a system where we've onboarded patients, they've given consent to the sharing of their data, and they would actually automatically receive euros into their bank account for the sharing of that data without ever having to, negotiate with research companies or even having to touch their data. So, and as I mentioned very briefly in that comment, I think this also speaks to data hugging and how we can incentivize biobanks to share their data. If they have automatic residual income coming from their data sharing, I think people are going to be a lot more likely to share their data. So.
Yeah. Okay, so then I am curious to know, maybe you could share, so what is the range of those rewards? For example, there are some different categories, because data also is in different categories and different size of data. Could you comment?
Yeah, so the way that we envision it personally is that when a researcher or a private organization, or there's some sort of for-profit research, obviously this is a little bit different when we're talking about nonprofit research, but when we're talking about for-profit research, automating that to be able to look at the amount of money that's actually being spent by the research entity for the data, and through governance mechanisms and consultation with stakeholders, working out what sort of percentage we think or they think they should receive from that. And it's not just financial rewards. You know, for example, when you donate blood, maybe you get a chocolate bar, something like that. But actually looking more seriously, we could be talking about automatic discounts on drugs or medical products or services or lab services. Obviously, we're very lucky in Europe that we don't pay so much for that with our excellent healthcare. However, there's still a cost, and we think that offsetting the cost, for example, if a pharma company is doing research on cancer drugs, I think being able to automatically reward patients to get either a discount or free drugs that they are helping contribute and bringing to market, that to me is not just an ethical win, but it's a financial win for the whole system.
Okay, thank you. So those great examples. And with this, I would like to invite our second speaker. I see that Tamas Bekeshi has joined Zoom already, and Tamas Bekeshi is AIT Health InnoStar's business development and communications expert and innovation mentor. So Tamas, you are very welcome.
Hi everyone. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome everyone. I'm just sharing my screen with you. I hope that you can see it. Just a moment. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So welcome everyone. I'm Tamas Bekeshi, responsible for the Central and Eastern Southern European Accelerator Program portfolio within EIT Health. This is so-called the RIS program. Maybe most of you heard about it. So this is a regional innovation scheme, and within regional innovation scheme, I'm responsible for the accelerator programs, how we call it within EIT Health. These are the business creation programs. So everything which is connected to startups, everything which is connected to especially early stage startups and innovators, helping them, supporting them to get into the market is with me. So let me start with a quick overview about our knowledge triangle, because as you can see it in the title of my presentation, collaboration is the key. So EIT Health has a knowledge triangle approach between education, research, and business, and we try to connect each and every dot within our map with the help of our more than 150 partners. So these are official classified partners who are mostly coming from the corporate world and the education sector. So we are talking about the biggest healthcare universities and healthcare corporations within Europe. They are part of our network, and we try to, of course, it's a win-win situation for each and every participant on this chain, because whenever we are bringing up new innovations, new talents coming out from the education and also from the accelerator programs, then it's super helpful for research and business organizations. Although business and research organizations are also having a pull effect, meaning that they are articulating new needs, new type of business opportunities, which are also helping the way of the new innovators. So of course, I really just narrow it down, because whenever I'm talking about research, business, and education parts of this chain, we are talking about multiple participants, multiple dots, and we try to connect these small dots by matchmaking and networking. And also, of course, organically organizing programs around this knowledge triangle. So we have just on the innovation part, because who is not really familiar with EIT Health, we are standing on 3 pillars. So innovation, education, and business creation. This is how I code accelerator programs. As I mentioned to you, accelerator programs, we are supporting startups from really ideation to the more mature phases. But on innovation, we are also working together with startups. We are also bringing them to the way of collaborating with big pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers under innovation projects. Now we are calling them flagship projects, and within flagship projects, they still have the opportunity to team up with big companies and working together with them for years organically. Besides that, we have also program where the startups are organizing pharmaceutical companies or corporations. So we are a little bit using here the reverse engineering way to introduce the, let's say, magnitude power of the startups towards corporations and also research partners and educational partners. So pretty much the collaboration is our belief, is our religion within EIT Health. So I will show you some examples how we are doing it, and also showing you the startup journey, how the dots are pretty much connected to each and every based on the different levels and maturity phases. The other, so just a little bit more detail, this knowledge triangle. So as you can see, we have business, research, and education, and payers, providers, and citizens within this illustration. We identify and initiate all around this circle. So as you can see, no matter what, where we are starting with, it's the business, the research, and education sector. So the knowledge triangle itself. They provide needs-driven and innovation. Actually, wherever we have the payers, providers, the citizens part, they see value in service and the products, and this is how actually can generate a lead for mostly business, but also for research and education sector. And of course, whenever we do have the needs for new innovations, then the payers, the providers, and citizens can be their target group because they have an unmet need. So this is pretty much again, it's a really narrowed view how we are thinking about the collaboration between the market and all the other dots, all the other participants of the sector. But this is one of our main roles here in EIT Health, to try to establish connections between these really fragmented parts of this whole ecosystem. Because of course, we do see collaborations between members of the ecosystem, but we definitely see, and this is also coming out from our latest maturity assessment and ecosystem mapping research, that wherever the community, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, guys, but this is what we research in certain countries, where through many interviews and many secondary researches, it's obviously been pointed out that wherever the community is strong, then the innovation capability and the potential, and of course, the business potential out of it is much more stronger. So one of our main findings out of this research is that developing the communities and investing into communities are the long-term goal for each and every uprising ecosystems within Europe. And we are mostly talking about, of course, Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe. So these are the countries which definitely needs to invest. And of course, whenever I'm talking about investment, it's not just money, it's also social cultural investment, because we do have our own history, each and every countries. We all have our social cultural bondages, which sometimes helping, sometimes is a little bit making challenges through the community to make a collaboration. But these are the things we definitely need to focus on, because otherwise we do see that it's a huge, again, it can be a huge help or a huge challenge whenever we are talking about developing new ecosystems. Just going forward, so let me show you the startup journey we have. So this is a really complex illustration. Of course, I'm really happy to share the presentation after this event. So we are starting, as I mentioned to you, we are starting from the talents. So we have EIT Health Innovation Days. Here we are talking about talented researchers, students, or of course, professionals who are about to seek new adventures within innovation. So this way, we are trying to create teams out of the talents, because again, collaboration, of course, it's a really basic level. By your own, of course, maybe you can do it, but it's really rare. So usually you need some collaboratives at the first glance, and you need a team to move forward with your innovation. And this is how we are moving forward to EIT Jumpstarter. This is the first, I'm not sure that you're familiar with the term Crosskick, knowledge and innovation community so KIC is the abbreviation for that, and EIT is standing in different KICs. So EIT Health is one of them, and whenever I'm saying cross KIC, it's meaning that we are not only focusing here on just health, but different other areas as well, like manufacturing, food, digital, etc. So EIT Jumpstarter is partially focusing on health, but focusing also other fields as well. But here, whenever we have the startups or teams, we can call them at that stage, we try to incubate their ideas and create a product or a service out of that. So here at EIT Jumpstarter, at the end of the program, they will have a clear view what is the product or a service they would like to move forward, and they're establishing their company, of course, in an ideal situation. And then we are moving forward, and here you can see also Wildcard. It's a huge program which is really unique because we all know that early stage innovations is not that attractive towards the market. So private investors and also the private sector obviously not really seeking opportunities in early stage innovation ideas because there is no evidence that it will go well, it will fly, or it will create revenue or on any type of return of investment further on. So first of all, I would say that all of our EIT Health programs are really helping these startups, really helping these ideas to be incubated and then accelerated towards the market because nobody else is doing. Besides the public funds and the European funds, like one of these are EIT Health, but Wildcard is actually one of the super strong points of this journey because here we are talking about 1.5 million euros investment to early stage innovations, and you will see that. Of course, there is a really strong guarantee around it, even though we are still talking about early stage innovations. We are selecting well, and all of these projects which have been invested to are flying. So I will show you one of the success stories out of it. So Wildcard is a kind of in-between link within the chain, but whenever we are going up, we have EIT has Risk Innovation Call, where we are talking about proof of concept. So here, again, out of the articulated, formulated service products and the incorporated teams are collaborating with research institutes, rarely corporates at that stage. So usually we are in this program, we are hosting research institutes and universities teaming up with startups, but here the startup is the lead and they are working together to create a proof of concept and then going forward with it. Of course, we have also spin-offs here. And whenever they are done with that, they have something tangible. They are something to show not already the market, but to, for instance, angel investors as well, but also to further networking and matchmaking participants. So the next point is InnoStars Awards. So this is where we can draw a line, because at the end of InnoStars Awards, most of the teams are entering to the market. So InnoStars Awards is working with MVP prototype stage. Again, proof of concept in Risk Innovation Call is done, so they can move forward. And with the prototype and the MVP, they can apply to InnoStars Awards. Here, we are teaching them, educating them how to really representing themselves on the market environment. They are learning also to the European regulations. So of course, from the health sector perspective, it's super important to be familiar with that. But they are also learning how to make marketing and communication for the healthcare industry. Personally, I'm a communication marketing specialist working for many multinational companies in my past, but definitely healthcare sector and the healthcare related communication marketing is specific. So we definitely are educating them to use their power, to use their knowledge and the product and service and represent it well on the market. As well as pitching, of course, it's part of the representation. So whenever they are done, most of them are entering to the market. And this is where we have a new program, actually, which we just launched last year, Attract to Invest. Attract to Invest is somewhere in between. You will see, so in the green field, these are the HQ programs. So all of the blue ones are organized by EIT House Innostar, specifically focusing on Central, Eastern, and Southern Europe. Everything which is green is also welcoming and hosting Western European startups as well. But here we do have an extra dot between Innostar's awards and Catapult or GoldTrack. So this is the Attract to Invest. Attract to Invest is actually for companies who are already entered the market but looking for a seed or serious investment round. It's super important that besides that, we try to connect startups and again, so all participants of the knowledge triangle with each other. We try to attract, we try to invite the money to the system because we do have our own financial resources, but our task is not to invest or actually give enough money for the startups, let's go this way. So we are giving them something to survive, something to use for their own project development and move forward. But of course, and we try to educate them that also investment is just a helping rod. It's not the final destination, because one of the biggest distrust towards startups is that they are looking always for investment and they are not interested in to enter the market at the end of the day and start to generate revenue. So we are keen to push them towards the real revenue, to the real deal. But while they are doing that, they definitely need some investment. In some cases, they need to enter to a new market, they need to extend their activities, and for different other purposes, they need extra investment. So Attract to Invest is actually educating them, not just only how to raise an investment round in a successful way, but more importantly, how to manage their investors. Because one of the other findings coming out from one of our previous researches, and it's not just a Central, Eastern, and Southern European problem, but also an issue in the Western European bloc, that many of the startups are, especially early stage, of course, they are just not familiar how to manage a relationship with an investor. So there is a company or somebody who is coming with a big bunch of money, and they're coming from the environment where usually friends and family invested to their companies, so they survive some ways. They are getting subgrants from European funds like us, but they didn't have the experience to have somebody who is actually pushing them from the outside world, mostly having more solid experience from the business world, and they are just not familiar with this whole situation, how to manage and how to live with that. So within Attract to Invest program, we are also preparing them. So they have dedicated senior investors for each and every participant of the program, and these investors are actually challenging them and also asking the questions they never ever wanted to hear. The good news is that this is a sandbox environment, a friendly environment, so they will face with all these kind of challenges in a friendly environment, so they can prepare for the real life. So here, again, the investors are really important collaborators. We would like to invite. We do have, so EIT has its own investor network. So let's say the official or the formal part of our investor base, but we do have a really solid informal base of investors, because just think about it, this is again a win-win situation. We are inviting investors who are always hunting new startups, new prosperous startups. We are more than happy to do that. And in return, investors are, of course, starting negotiations with our startups. So it's good for us. We are not interested from business perspective to their success, but we are more than happy, and this is our task, to help their way towards a success. So this is also good for us, good for the startups, and good for the investors. So it's, again, all these kind of collaboration model we are working with is based on a win-win situation. So after this, and I would say the first edition, 2022 has been done. 10 startups participated, already 4 made a successful investment round. Of course, I would be really hypocritical if I'm saying that this is only our success and this is only because of Attract to Invest, but we are really glad that we can help them to make this happen. So we are continuing this edition with 20 startups this year. So we are actually increasing the number of participants from this year because it's a huge success at the moment. and we are hoping that it will continue this way. And you can see it on the green corner, the other parts of our journey. So Catapult, GoTrack, Startup Amplifier. This is the program I told you before, where the startups are actually teaming up. So they are the drivers, and they are inviting corporates to work with them for a 3 to 5 years project. This is our task to help them, because sometimes they are, of course, having hard times knocking on the doors of big corporates. But this is one of our so our help in the collaboration to open these doors for them. And they can drive the projects, and they can actually gain financial support from us besides other institutes. And this is not just only about collaborating with the pharmaceutical companies, but making a bigger project than they would be dedicated originally. And we do have, of course, Bridgehead. This is the soft landing program. This is how we try, in this program, we try to have the startups to extend their activities within Europe or outside of Europe. And GoTrack is mainly about, so it's an MIT, EIT Health collaboration. It's about actually how to maneuver European startups to the overseas market, especially the US market. So this is pretty much how our journey looks like. As I know, it's a huge amount of information. I don't want to make it more complicated or more detailed. Of course, if you have any questions later on, I would be more than happy to answer for it. So just a quick overview about Jumpstarter, InnoStars Awards, and Attract to Invest. I don't want to go into details because pretty much I did. If you have any questions further on, I would be happy to answer for you. But as I'm saying on my watch, I would go further just because of the time limitation. So would like to show you some of the success stories from the previous years. I told you before that for early stage innovation, it's really rare that a significant amount, I mean, I'm talking about more than 20, 30, or 50,000 euros. So we are talking about 1.5 million euros here in Wildcard. So it's pretty rare that any public or private funding is investing into startups. Of course, with the right amount and quality of filters and selection process, the risk can be, I'm not saying mitigated, but minimized. So one of the success stories coming out of Wildcard is iLove. So actually, as you can see, they received 2019 $2 million investment from the Wildcard program, and in 2020, so they are proceeding well on the market. They are still on the market. They are generating revenue. They became a pretty big company actually for nowadays. But as a next stage of their journey, they received a 1.0 investment from the Microsoft and Mayfield Fund. They have some other news and communication related spotlights, like one of the co-founders named under the Forbes 30 under 30 list. And actually they started to work with Google for Startups UK program and other big companies programs later on. But the most important is they enter the market, they are generating revenue, and they are helping patients till this moment. So Legends is the next one. So actually, they are one of our alumni from Jumpstarter and also for InnoStars Awards programs. They win the European Youth Awards in 2019 and 2020. They received a 360K investment from one of the local funds. And lately, they also joined to Health Catapult program. So it seems that, and guys, it's important to mention here that we are not obsessed to have these startups coming back to each and every program, because it's not about that. It's just a good feedback that whenever they are moving up to their life cycle, we have programs to help them at certain areas. It's not about that they should come back every year to a new program and get the money, get the education, because this is not about life. It's not about our programs are just, again, a helping rod. So it's more important that they are getting into the market, starting their activities and generating revenue in the normal circumstances. So this is how also Legends did. Europe, so one of the Polish startups, they were also part of InnoStars Awards, the European Health Catapult. So they had a huge career within 2 years, actually. So they had in 2018, actually in 2019, they won InnoStars Awards, and also the European Health Catapult, they were the winners of the biotech category. In 2018, they got the 250K investment from the StyleFinder. Then in 2020, 500K from private investment. But what is more important, that they received 2.5 million euros from EIC Greendale. They are already in cooperation with cosmetic brands all over the world, and they have a huge success nowadays. Oh, sorry. So one of the recent one, this is a Croatian startup, Enibiom. They are already on the market. They are actually generating a really nice revenue. They are one of the startups participating in the first batch of Attract to Invest in 2022. Well, they are one of the startups, actually, they recently raised a new investment, 1.2 million euros. As a pre-seed investment, but what is more important, that they are already on the market and they just entered the US market. So they started to sell, they got mostly the online channels. They are actually advertising themselves and sell the products, but just recently entered the US market and having a nice success there. Light Science, so it's one of the Italian startups we had in InnoStars Awards 2022. I just wanted also to bring, because most of our startups, whenever we are talking about success stories, are entering the market and having an investment. But this is also important that they started, and the last two success stories I brought you, it's about cooperating with other institutes locally or actually regionally. So they participated in the CES 2022 Las Vegas with the Italian trade agency. And they started, and because they went to enlist themselves to the public health system in Italy. So actually, this is part of their cooperation with the Italian government, and their solution is actually becoming a public service in the Italian healthcare system, and hopefully in Europe as well. And Corify Care, Spanish startup, so they are leading a huge program. It's called Care ECIG project, which is a governmental program in Spain. So they're super successful in Spain, and also they entered to the Portuguese market, and they're extending their activities. So they are already a public service in Spain, and now getting into the Portuguese healthcare system as well. I know, again, that's a huge amount of information I share with you. If you have any questions, I see, as far as I see, 3 questions or 3 comments within the chat, but maybe...
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. So for you particularly is one question for the moment. Okay. How you prioritize unmet clinical needs? And you have some list for the...
Yes, so how we are working is actually, you have this... can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So we are standing on the Innovation Education Accelerator leg, but we are also having partnership management within EIT Health, meaning that we try to, as far as I've shown you, that up onto the knowledge triangle, we also try to collect the needs of our partners, who are pharmaceutical companies, healthcare providers, and education institutes. Whenever we are talking about the prioritization, it's mainly the prioritization of our partners. So we are not in the role to decide what is important, what is not. So they are deciding up onto their needs, up onto the local market needs, or just the healthcare needs, what is the most important innovation priorities they would like to push, and they're looking for different solutions. And up onto that, we are serving them. We are trying to grab them as many options and potential innovations as possible. So this is how we are prioritizing. Okay,
thank you very much. And with this, I wanted to thank you for for your great overview on incubator for startups and how you are providing platform to develop talents and to develop those best practices you just shared. So this is great. And with this, I would like to invite our last speaker at today's plenary session, Nin Tonison, professor at Estonian Biobank Institute of Genomics, University of Tartu. Yes, so Nim, if you are ready, so please welcome on stage.
Yes, good afternoon. I really appreciate being invited to this session, and I also would like to thank Scandinavian node of Yeti Health for nominating me. So I'm happy to present. Let's see. Try this way. I'm happy to present here Estonian Biobank experience from collaboration with clinical institutions, with startups, to show a couple of our return of data initiatives and also present the BRIGHT project, what I'm currently leading, and it's for the bringing the precision prevention of breast cancer into broader use in healthcare systems in Europe. So I hope you are able to see the slides. Okay. So Estonian Biobank was established in 2000 when the legal framework was in place, and we started recruitment in 2002 already. So it's one of the oldest biobanks what we have currently in Europe. We have had 3 large recruitment periods, and now we hold samples from more than 210,000 individuals, comprising about 20% of Estonian adult population. And of course, we regularly update the healthcare data for all of those. We have other data that I'm going to show, but this is a slide showing the legal status or important statements in the biobank law already from 2000, that the participants have right to access their data, but also not to know their genetic data. They cannot be charged for accessing the data. They are protected from discrimination in various relationships. And if now the biobank with its data and impact on healthcare is going to a broader scale, the legal framework is also being currently updated. So here's a population tree in Estonia, and I'm showing that on average, the biobank participants are a bit younger, and we have overrepresentation of females. And this has also impact on our pilot initiatives. So briefly here are shown the data sets that we have. All the participants have been genotyped. I'm happy to announce that also we have now metabolomics profiles of all the participants. Then also some other data sets, but important is that we also have NGS data sets that allow for imputing the coding regions, non-coding regions, and we can do various studies also with the very detailed genomic data on those who have the coding regions sequenced, for example, look at the carrier status and so on. And of course, all the data is kept in pseudonymized form, and it can be used for academic research, and also we are open for commercial collaborations. I'm just showing one example of disease trajectories that we get from linking to the national eHealth and other registries. This is done every year or a couple of years for the whole subset, for the whole set of participants that we have. So it's really a very large prospective study. Perhaps switching now to one of my favorite topics, the breast cancer. I'm just showing that it's important topic globally. So it's the most common malignancy in women. And it's also, although the screening is broadly accepted and encouraged by WHO, it usually starts at age 50, but we have considerable part of cases also below 50, and we feel that this is not properly addressed, not in Estonia and also in majority of other countries. So this is the distribution of cancer cases in Estonia. The breast cancer is also the most common malignancy in women in Estonia, with more than 800 cases. And we feel that having the same type of screening for everybody is not appropriate any longer. We need to move to stratified screening, and of course, genomics is an excellent tool to do it because the information doesn't change over the course of life. Once we have the genomic information, we can run all types of risk estimation algorithms and provide recommendations. But before moving to the healthcare system, we would like to be sure that those approaches are acceptable, feasible, they are cost effective, they are clinically effective, and they can be accessible. If we are talking about the genetic landscape of breast cancer, it's important to understand that we have the hereditary breast cancer shown in the left, and we have the common breast cancer from the multitude of very weakly significant risk markers. And currently, the genetic tests are distinct for the polygenic risk score, for the risk SNPs, and also for the hereditary cancer. And the hereditary breast cancer testing is commonly accepted in healthcare systems. It doesn't cover the polygenic background, and also the polygenic risk score tests, they don't cover any of those high-risk variants whatsoever. And if we combine those two approaches, the important thing is to decide how to handle those patients further. And I can tell only that the recommendations for the clinical management based on polygenic risk score are first deduced from the accepted guidelines for the risk level of monogenic findings, shown in the left. And also it's important to have at least some assurance that those people or women don't have any hereditary breast cancer predisposition from monogenic findings. And MPV testing is classically done on clinical criteria, whether the person has early onset breast cancer or there is extensive family history of breast and related cancer. If something is found, it always includes counseling of family members. We need questionnaires, broader use than it's currently done. And also these MPVs are routinely searched in clinical exome sequencing. Currently, the guidelines are being revised, and there is a consideration that universal testing could be done for all breast cancer patients, and they are much more expensive compared to the polygenic risk score tests. And we currently find without any pre-selection, we might have findings in 1 to 2%, which is the population prevalence of those variants that we know in Estonia. On the contrary, if we move for polygenic testing, it's primarily meant for healthy women for precision prevention and stratification. It has no implications for family members. Okay, the first degree family members may have some correlation in the polygenic risk score because we share half of the genomic information, but it's not used for any decision making on family members. They are much less expensive per test, and even in unselected population, it could affect decisions in at least 20% of individuals. So there is certainly a reason why to bring those tests into broader use. There is one important announcement, also a statement by ACMG, American College of Medical Genetics and Genomics, and they also emphasize that the isolated polygenic risk score testing is not. Sorry, I had the mouse pointer on the wrong screen, so I just wanted to repeat that the isolated PRS polygenic risk score testing is not appropriate anymore because we just must understand that the disease may come from predisposition of polygenic background as well as monogenic findings. And we have run several pilot projects on breast cancer, also from Estonian Biobank. We have evaluated the presence of monogenic findings and returned them to subjects, and we have also run return of result of the high polygenic background and risk levels to women in Biobank. And this is one of the study schemes where we divided the study. It was a national pilot performed a couple of years ago, where the participants were divided into monogenic and polygenic risk groups. The first included 109 women, where only 10% were aware of those monogenic risk findings. And of course, the other one was performed for the healthy women, and they had no idea about this type of genetic predisposition whatsoever. And the first group was counseled by geneticists and clinical oncologists, and the second one was counseled by clinical oncologists in Tartu University Hospital. So in parallel, we also re-evaluated the risk levels related to monogenic findings, and one perhaps important finding was that it doesn't make much sense to focus on the sub-50 group alone for the monogenic findings, because if we look only on the cancer incidence, the medians of having the disease are quite close to 50 in case of BRCA genes, and even above 50 according to Estonian Biobank data for CHEK2, which is a moderate risk gene. And we had also a bit lower absolute risk levels for BRCA1 and 2 compared to the literature in our population cohort, reaching 50% of incidence by age of 50, by age of 70, 80. Perhaps what is also important is that just showing the impact of those return of results studies for the participants is that we really discovered quite a number of new breast cancer cases. In the MPV group, of course, there was a considerable cancer history already in the participants before. And in high polygenic risk score group, we discovered then 10 incident cases in approximately 950 individuals. In the monogenic group, we discovered 6 new breast cancer cases, mostly fortunately in early stage, but there was also one 3C stage, with a late stage breast cancer case, just in a very short follow-up period. And one kidney cancer case. So how do people react to this kind of recall studies? Mostly they appreciate it. They are quite content and calm, and they can handle this information. Of course, part of individuals are also worried, and they need perhaps additional support. So now we decided to expand this kind of experience also to European scale, and we have been we're lucky to be funded by EIT Health since 2022, while using this experience from national pilots and engaging also startup contingents, and trying to implement this kind of polygenic risk score use also in other healthcare systems in Estonia and other countries. So the total budget is 2.86 million, and it's going to over 3 years. And we are currently on the 2nd year. So here are the consortium players. We have academic partners, healthcare providers, we have business partners, and public healthcare payers involved. And this is a risk model that we're using. It has been developed by using UK Biobank data, and it was later validated in Estonian Biobank, and we are now planning for re-evaluation also in the increased cohort in Estonian Biobank and with the most recent data. And how do we manage those women? We gradually invite them according to the polygenic risk score level to mammography screening, starting from age of 34, 35, and until 48, from 50 and above. Of course, all the women already are engaged in mammography screening in Estonia and most other countries in Europe. There are examples of mammography screening in 45 and in Sweden even in 40, but even they considered that it might be useful to have this kind of stratification in addition to the common practice. So we don't plan currently to reduce or less intense screening on the lower risk age, which would require more randomized study data, and this is perhaps also the future. And of course, we have implemented a participant field questionnaire for evaluating the need for hereditary breast cancer screening, and this is done by clinical geneticists also participating in the study. So here are shown briefly the clinical recommendations depending on the risk levels. The clinical study will involve over 2,000 women in Estonia, Portugal, and Sweden. In Estonia, we are nearly completed with the study. The polygenic arm is completed already. The monogenic findings are still searched for. We are engaging the family members and collecting data now. I'm happy to show also very initial results. It seems that we have a bit overrepresentation of those people with familial breast cancer in our group, because 18% of the study subjects in Estonia were referred to clinical genetics counseling. I'm hoping that this number will decrease in the future if this approach would be made broader available in the healthcare system. And 15% of those enrolled in the study, they got the recommendation to start mammography screening soon. And I'm happy also to tell that after those national pilot studies, Estonian public healthcare payer already decided that based on it can be reimbursed if women are referred to healthcare system to mammography screening based on the high polygenic risk. I think it's one of the key steps needed to implement this kind of approach in healthcare. And here are the percentiles depending percentage of the participants depending on the relative risk level in our study protocol and according to UK NICE risk levels. And I'm also showing a couple of slides from the questionnaire. So if people consider really that the information of this type of approach was clearly understandable, and they were mostly able to answer the questions related to family history. People are relatively calm and content, and not so much worried, perhaps based on the genetic testing results. And of course, some of the people, women, require counseling. But after counseling, most of people consider that it was generally useful and helpful. And they have much less worries compared to the status before. So also a couple of slides about the other studies that we have done in the biobank. So we had the familial hypercholesterolemia study, which is also a relatively frequent disease. And it has population prevalence 1 in 200 approximately. And what we saw that pre-study, most of the subjects were not diagnosed with familial hypercholesterolemia. Of course, some of them had some unspecific hypercholesterolemia diagnosed after the study involving clinical geneticists, cardiologists, and biobank data. Most of the subjects were diagnosed with familial hypercholesterolemia, and their treatment was changed accordingly. And why it's important to have this knowledge in hand is that independent of the absolute LDL cholesterol levels, those individuals have higher risk for cardiovascular disease. And it's very difficult to distinguish the polygenic dyslipidemia and monogenic dyslipidemia based on the cholesterol levels alone. Also, a couple of slides about type 2 diabetes, where we used the polygenic risk score, and people were able to come to biobank and have some broader feedback report on them, which included the type 2 diabetes. So over 2,500 individuals were counseled. And we see here that the diabetes prevalence indeed increases depending on the polygenic risk score levels. And we used it for creating the disease trajectories. So the reports included genetic risk, and then also the summary risk, depending also on the BMI. And here in the blue, it's shown where the risk levels estimated were for a certain age, and then we used it for counseling it. And it might be really interesting to see how it has affected the behavior of research participants. There is one slide also on one example of antidepressant side effects. So these reports included also pharmacogenetics, risk factors, and some of the recommendations. And indeed, one of the participants had a serious side effect from 2 antidepressants used in parallel, but unfortunately, they both were metabolized by CYP2C19, and she was a slow metabolizer, so she had quite serious side effects. So coming to the end, I hope I have convinced you that the biobank can really help to support development and implementation of those precision prevention tools in healthcare, involving testing of participants and learning from this experience. And of course, we could include here also the innovation partners, startups working on certain tools in this nice knowledge triangle shown also by the EIT Health representative. I also would like to say that Estonia has just announced the release of IT infrastructure for personalized medicine purposes, so for risk calculations done from the biobank data, but also newly created data by the medical labs. So this infrastructure will be made available for the healthcare partners. We are waiting yet for some of the legal updates, and this is a picture from a conference just last week where those announcements were made. So I'm really looking forward for its broader implementation. It's clear that the breast cancer and pharmacogenetics are the first candidate risk estimations in this infrastructure, and perhaps coronary artery disease will follow. And now they are looking also at the exact tools which could be implemented in this information system. So I'm happy to thank all the collaborators in the broader network, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nim, for this excellent and inspiring speech. And really, congratulations, biggest congratulations on those advancements you implemented in Estonia. Really, they have impact, especially those pilot projects that on breast cancer that had been replicated to other countries. So they have meaningful impact, definitely, on prevention of disease outcomes. And with that, I wanted to open chat because I've seen few questions. Just, yeah, so few questions to you, but I cannot see chat. So maybe organizers could help me. Okay, so here we go. So question, what disease area in your review is most promising for PON Baltic collaborative research?
I think all of these are could be really well used. So we have plenty of information on the breast cancer monitoring findings, and some of them can be well searched also in genotyping data. So actually, the pilot studies that I showed, about 2/3 of those markers were discovered in genotyping data. So beyond questionnaires, I think it makes also sense to dig even the very cheaply obtained genotyping data for the high-risk monitoring findings. And we are relatively uniform in our genetic background, I think also the polygenic scores can be nicely adopted. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then question, what would you think about availability of Estonian bank data for Lithuanian companies?
Yes, there are certain access rules, so we are open for collaborations, including commercial collaborations. There are certain applications that you must make, but it first makes sense to come up with a simple query for the data, what you would like to have. Then we can, there is a research board in the biobank which discusses those applications to look if this data is available, whether it can be released to the company directly, or we suggest to have a collaborative project. And only then, I think the second step would be go to the ethics committee and have approval there. It first makes sense to be sure that this data is available.
Okay. Thank you so much, and we are looking forward to hearing more about upcoming health data sharing initiatives from Estonia in the future. So thank you. And now I wanted to invite audience which participate here in the room, and also those who are online, for having less than 18 minutes break. Our next part, panel discussion, will start at 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. Central Europe time. Hello, welcome to today's panel discussion, Unlocking Health Data Potential, Collaboration Opportunities for Startups and Business. And goal of our session is to have a thought-provoking discussion, to hear actionable insights, and probably to come to some reasonable, meaningful solutions, maybe. I wanted to introduce all panelists which are here on the table. Giedrė Tubelytė is expert at law firm Alex Valiūnas. Monika Vetingytė, Diabetes Start Team. Tomas Lapinskas, Kaunas Clinics Director of Public Health Research and Studies, and Paulius Vilemas, founder and CEO of Energenas Group. With that, I would like to start, and first we will looking forward to hearing from Monika Vetingytė, her startup experience.
Great. So I'm a part of Diavisor team. We are an AI solution that gives diabetic patients personalized answers to their queries. And this idea was born, for the first part, it was born from personal experience. I am diabetic, and I've encountered severe complications to my vision due to lack of access of medical information that exceeds beyond doctor's office. So it's available to me, at every second. So keeping that in mind, I was very intrigued to join a healthcare hackathon for rare diseases, where we formed our Diavisor team, and we conducted that. People with chronic illnesses do have a lack of information, medical information. And due to that lack, they encounter a lot of complications. So starting from hackathon, we started to create the model. And at first, the model, ML model, did not achieve a satisfactory results due to the nature and the volume of data. Later on, we figured out with the help of medical professionals and data scientists that we do need personal data. We do need users' e-health history records in order to provide them with personalized answers. Even if you look at medical professionals, without context, without information about medical history of the patient, it wouldn't be possible to make judgment and accurate decisions. So we are trying to get access to that data by collaborating with national data banks, healthcare providers, universities, and actively participating in such events, educating ourselves and everyone else on this topic.
Okay.
And another thing perhaps I should mention is one of the key challenges that we encounter was, of course, the access to the data. And the data must also be high quality, comprehensive one. We encountered that without collaboration and partnerships with mentioned institutions, we wouldn't be able to provide personalized information, and such solution wouldn't be able to even exist. So with collaborations, we are able to be a part of healthcare improvement movement. And we're going to do it not only by collaborating, but of course, by establishing strong privacy protection policies, because there must be rigorous protocols to ensure it. We will anonymize the data. We are not only asking for consent of the users, but actually actively educating them, providing the context on how the data is used, which data we're going to take it, and why is it important to use it. So by being transparent and communicative, we are forming the trust, and not with only the users, but also healthcare stakeholders. So we're planning to do that by adhering to GDPR compliance and hiring data privacy officer that is certified in the field. And at the end of the day, it's really important to establish the trust. So our solution is designed to better lives of chronic illness patients and kind of improving the outcomes and even reducing the costs of the illness. Yes, and by doing that, we really want to be a part of this improvement of healthcare system.
Thank you very much. So you are doing really nice job improving outcomes and quality of life for the patients in Lithuania. And my question is, what challenges have you faced during your startup journey?
Definitely the challenges of having that system and infrastructure to access to the data. And as a small business, we are actively seeking for these solutions and pushing initiatives for the data sharing.
Okay, so could you share some examples, some best practices, how you came those challenges?
Absolutely. So like mentioned, participating in such events, educating ourselves and healthcare professionals, and perhaps trying to collaborate and speak to people who are doing it. So the collaboration is the key.
Collaboration, partnership, yes.
Exactly.
Among all stakeholders in
Yes.
the project. Yeah.
And the users, patients too.
And
Let's not forget that.
Very, very important aspect. As well.
Yes, because we want to also provide patients with the choice to share the data. So having a control, they should have a control in our opinion.
Yeah, because today one of presenters, Daniel Bryan, was sharing like data that 20-30% of Polish population are ready to share, and they trust data sharing. And when it comes to Scandinavian countries, percentage is much higher, 90%. So we belong also to Central Eastern Europe area. So, and I won't expect different figures for Lithuania in order to overcome those challenges and to minimize this gap from versus Scandinavian countries and our countries. I think educational is a key
Definitely.
element in this journey. Okay, Monica, so thank you very much. And you raised and explained also how you overcame patient privacy and ethical use of data. And now I wanted to ask questions from and expecting answers from Giedrė. And Giedrė, questions to you are related to regulation for secondary data use in Lithuania and how it was implemented and what challenges teams who are working on startups, who are developing solutions for business, they typically face in interpreting and complying with those regulations in Lithuania.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate your invitation to this event. So I would really happy to share my opinion about what challenges really face teams when adhering to this new regulation. In fact, this law is quite a new legal act, and naturally there are a lot of challenges to different stakeholders. And as Jolanta previously said, those stakeholders are very diverse. For example, starting from businesses, from pharmaceutical industry, from medical devices inventors, also patient organizations, also health policymakers, lawmakers, and so on. So these stakeholders, we all have, I think, different challenges in implementing this law. But now, as our goal is, in fact, the goal of that law was firstly to provide possibility to gain new insights from the secondary data from the secondary health data. And this data, health data, they are often called like real-time data because it's really big data, in fact, and methods how to deal with this data should be different from other methods that deal with, let's say, simple data. So first, I would like to talk to provide my insights on challenges. What challenges face those applicants who seek permits from our supervisory institution. So as you may know, our model of this law is based on the Finnish one. And that Finnish one, it provides a one-stop shop. It means that we have one institution, which is state data agency now. Previously, that was the statistical department. So they are the only institution where applicants should submit the applications and the data which are provided under permits. They are shared in that in a platform that belongs to that state data agency. So I first, for my personal experience and my personal opinion, the first challenge is that still we don't know what data we can have there in that platform. And of course, I think crucial issue is time during which businesses can receive that data. First of all, the process starts in data holders or data controllers, as it's provided in our law. So data holders usually are health institutions, healthcare institutions, and the problem is that they have difficulties when providing even not even data, but information, because that state data agency, it has right to ask, to request that different healthcare organization provides information or description what data they have in their let's say archives or informational systems. So, but the problem is that in fact we consider this as a burden, because first of all we don't have any resources for that. We are not provided for any additional reimbursement for that. And in fact, it is a time-consuming issue, time-consuming activities to collect those data, especially when we are unstructured. For example, let's say a simple example is that, let's say the researcher wants to collect data on population height, and let's say to investigate correlation of that height with some diseases. So only to collect that data on height, they are stored in a different electronic basis, in a different formats, and that healthcare institution, it has to provide it in one structured format. And it's quite uneasy for her. So it's understandable that we have really big problems sometimes. And when the law was passed, so there was a prediction that data controllers in 2 years they will have provided 30% of their data, and about 60% information, what data they stored. And in 5-year period, those numbers, they should reach relatively 50% and 80%. So I think let's say, these percents are quite low, and dynamic is quite slow, in fact. So I think this problem still will persist, and maybe this fact is now quite we maybe are aware of that fact. But during the first half a year, the state agency provided only 3 permits, and they had 6 applications. So as you can see, business is not very active in this field yet. And let's go to another issue that is very interesting, another challenge that's quite interesting for me, because I often heard from those institutions which are engaged into biomedical researches, that the problem is that you have to have double consent for biomedical research, and also you have to obtain that permit from state data agency. So this is like double process, but I think that it is a good thing that now we have an amendment, draft amendment for this law, and it had to be passed on June 1st, but now it is scheduled a little bit later. And the essence, the main goal of that amendment is to eliminate that double consent, because in fact, when you apply for permit for other researches, not biomedical researches, you don't need consent of data subjects. So I think this challenge will go away in some time after that draft amendment will be adopted. What else? There are other issues that are quite interesting for me. And this is related to some areas where those permits are issued. And for that, the company should work in particular areas. That means innovation, science researches, education, and others. But for example, sometimes there are very interesting questions. I think these are usually should be addressed to that state agency. Because, for example, if agency should issue a permit, if in case that application was related to innovations in, let's say, industry of alcoholic beverages. Is it, well, as we can hear from the previous presentations, patients are very, very concerned about that their health data will be used for, let's say, improving tobacco industry, alcoholic beverage industry, and also some other, let's say, for taking other detrimental decisions, legal decisions, for example, or those related to insurance benefit. So our law is silent in this case, but we have another example, and which is pan-European example, and Jolanta has mentioned that this is European health data space, and there they have a list of those activities where data processing, secondary use of data would be prohibited. And among those activities are those types of activities where detrimental decisions could be taken with regard to persons. For example, some legal decisions, also decisions that relate to insurance benefit, and also to those products that are harmful, in fact, for people. Yet another issue what I see is that our law is only applicable for those entities which are engaged into economic activities in Lithuania, only in Lithuania. That means if you have a, let's say, international company from, let's say, Switzerland, at the time being, it could not obtain or submit application and obtain permit for secondary use of health data in Lithuania. So I think there we also have a proposal of that European health data space where this issue is resolved, and every company from every European country, not even company, also let's say natural person will be able to apply for such permit, but this proposal of that European health data space is now under consideration of European Parliament and other institutions, and possible implementation of this, I think, is not earlier than in 2025. So, what are the ways of overcoming those challenges? So, I think from practical side, my opinion is that taking into account that examination of application may be prolonged, so so businesses should apply as much earlier as they can for a permit. Also, I would strongly advise to communicate with that state data agency, because we have a separate team which is engaged in examination of applications, and we also communicate with applicants, propose some solutions, because applicants usually do not have experience. This is a new thing, and naturally we have to be somehow guided through that process. So in fact, that agency representatives are very welcoming. So I really advise to communicate with them.
Okay, thank you very much, Giedrė, for very comprehensive, I would say, explanation, also covering all issues, and some suggestions could be available for business to implement and to use data properly, to be adherent to the law, what is essential when we talk about health data and use of health data. And now I wanted to ask Paulius from investment, from business side, because you have great experience. So what would be your thinking in terms of opportunities that startups could bring in order to accelerate health data use for business?
Okay, so it's I think it's very interesting and very challenging topic to talk, because I think it's extremely complex, and I believe that we cannot take just one side of the argument, and we cannot just talk about startups, not talking about the ecosystem. I think if we basically want to really make a difference in this area, and if we really want to at least jump into last wagon, guys, we're not speaking that we're in front. We're just hoping to jump on the last wagon in Europe and in the world with that, what we're doing. We really need to kind of think big. And I hope that somebody who hears that discussion kind of gets into brain that idea that you really need to think big and implement fast to get something out. Yeah. So I would like to start a little bit from the bigger picture. I always love to talking about the startups to understand their purpose, what they're doing. Yes. So I would like to raise that question, ask, what are we doing in the country with that? What's the purpose of what we're doing? What's the purpose of data? What's the purpose of open data? What's the purpose of data in medicine? Yes. So it's not to make cash and make money for the startups, guys. I think that's the key point. That's the key point. Startups are the part of the ecosystem which can thrive if ecosystem is built in the right way. And this is how we really need to start thinking about. Yes. What is ecosystem? Ecosystem is that we can finally, after I don't know how many years of just talking, to come up with a personal medicine. Yeah. We're speaking about the personal medicine. And guys, at the moment, everyone who is above 50, I believe, yes, you're going to get the, cardiac diagnostic thing. Guys, that's nothing to do with the personal medicine. Can we do differently? We can do that for more than 5 years already. That if I have a risk of that, I have some special program to do it. If I don't, I just simply don't waste my time. Yeah. We are not talking about it yet. So if we're going there, we say we want to change the system, how it works. We want to make it personalized. We make the system to be built on data decisions. Yes, we have a bunch of that in theory. We have genome sequencing. We have huge numbers of information in our e-health systems. Yes, if we speak about the image data, we have huge repositories of MRI, CT, ultrasound scans, loads of things. Yes, so what we want to do with this? So first of all, we really want to become. I don't know what you will want, but we should want to become the leading, let's say, at least country in this really personalized medicine, to become the personalized medicine based on data, where we can show somebody still something, yes? Because if we, then the next thing is, how do we do that? And so that's the question to the startups, what's your team? Yeah, who is doing it? So in the country level, who is doing that? Medical data in Kaunas Klinikos, they have their depositorium of their images. Santariškės has their own depositorium of their images. Šiauliai has their own image depositorium. So guys, I just starting here. Yeah. If we speak about genetics, I have no clue where to look for that. There is in Santariškės, there is a genetics institute, which most probably has, in the best case scenario, 10,000 genome scans. It's a joke. Estonians, the person who just spoke, have 200. In the country population of 1.3 million. So we I'm putting a little bit in the perspective, yes? Who handles the things? Department of Statistics. How is that related to the medicine? I'm the doctor, I'm coming, let's say startup, coming up with ideas. What's happening? Yeah, information from statistics department goes most probably to some hospitals. So then doctor who has their own business to do, getting information, please prepare the information for somebody who requested. Is that efficiency? So who is doing that? That's the question. So I'm looking from the perspective of the startup. So I don't have an answer here. I think there is no owner to the system. Unfortunately, this is my impression, yes. And finally, yeah, the quality. What are you giving out? What's there? What you can, what's on one exit side, yes. So, and this is what we're talking about, the standards, about where you get information, how fast do you get information, yes. And this is really a bit amazing, because if we're speaking about the numbers of 6 applications in 1.5 years with 3 permits, so the one question is most probably nobody is interested. So why do we do that? Or the question is, maybe the system is not put in the right way, yes? So I would say the data is valuable, first of all, if it's in the right way structured. So that means it's well searchable, you can get the easy access, and finally, it's basically centralized and have big volumes of data, yes. And most probably we think still that the data we hold here has the value, but we have to understand with every day the value of data we're holding in the separate silos, which means in Kauno Klinikos, in Santariškės, it's deteriorating. Because somebody is coming up with 200 scans, with centralized image depository in the country, yes, with integration between these systems into their e-health, and that value skyrockets. And nobody wants to talk to somebody who needs to run around the different buildings with a bucket of something, please give me that, please give me that. No. So I believe being here a bit pessimistic on this side, yes, which I kind of love sometimes, because it helps to get a good perspective. Is there an opportunities? I think yes. And opportunities come from one simple thing: we are small. If we are small, we can be fast. I can't imagine how they're going to do that in Germany, knowing German system and German, diversification of different hospital systems, et cetera. So, but if we can understand that, we most probably can do a really good job and really squeeze maximum of value for everybody, for all ecosystem. That means us as the patients, yes, as well as the startups who can build then on the bottlenecks, which are going to show up when you have the functional ecosystem. So just coming back maybe to Estonian side, it's quite interesting thing. I think a good part here, they're not that far away, not that far ahead of us, although they have couple very important differences from us, yes? So first of all, as you heard in the presentation, they have much bigger scan of genome, which is well-structured, and it's central for the whole country. 2, they have their medical imaging system built in 2008, I think they started. And what they've done, they had centralized depositorium. That means that all images in the country is being held in one database, which is operated by the hospitals. So hospital is established. That was at the beginning a smart move because they wanted to save the money for the investment. And they did the kind of hospitals chipped in and put the whole big one database for the whole country. So that's two. And the third one, I think they started the e-patient system in 2005. So basically, if I'm not mistaken, in Estonia, there are 1.3 million patients, and they have 1.6 million records in the data system, yes? So that means they have also some people from outside who are in the system, yes? And just to understand where they're moving now, they have actually joined all these networks, yes, into one system. They actually done that in 2015, which is, I think, called, Health and Welfare Information System Center. So basically, under the Ministry of Healthcare, they created a central, organization, which is going to handle that data. So if they do that fast, they're going to be, again, one of the best in Europe. Can we do that? If we kind of start doing more than speaking, I think we can still do that with the good thing that we at least are 3 million rather than 1.3. So our data should be more valuable in the sense because of the size. So I don't know, this is how I see it. So, and if we have a ecosystem, function ecosystem, I believe that's where these startups can thrive. Because in all other ways, somebody is solving a small portion of some solution, which is not necessarily a bottleneck in the system. And it's made, somebody think it's a big value, but when you come up to the big system, it becomes, nobody's interested in that because it just solves a small portion of the huge, problem. So I think startups are doing a great job in what they're trying to do now and these days. But I think most probably, I would say the government must really take much bigger responsibility for moving the system into the level where we can do that. And final argument is I think we are at the very, very interesting stage at the moment, because what we have on the table, it was never, ever present before. It's AI, and there's some other things in gene sequencing like long reads, which open totally new opportunities in this area. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulius. And to be more optimistic
I am
than
optimistic.
pessimistic. So I think we have to be realistic and to face reality. And you described it very well. And the thing is really, so when we look to key capabilities which are needed to use potential of data, I think this is much about of having national strategy and aligning stakeholders, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So with this, I would like to ask Tomas, because Professor Tomas Lapinskas is public director of the biggest hospital in the region, Kaunas Clinics. And Tomas, what is your perspective in terms of opportunities for secondary data use in Lithuania, from the point of view of director at biggest clinic?
Thank you, Jolanta. It's really a very important questions. What I'm happy that indeed we're starting to speak about that. And a few years ago, we're just very, very started. But I probably agree that the most important thing is the value, what we're going to create when we start using this data. And probably the main person in the area should be the patient, right? And when we speak about the personalized approach and personalized medicine, so the personal data is the mandatory thing, because you cannot provide personalized medicine without the personalized data. So the value and the purpose is very important. So what I can say from the hospital perspective, that indeed we have at a national level, this one-stop shop, right? Ability to get a request from the national level. But as far as I remember, we didn't get anyone from them. Nevertheless, we are cooperating on different levels in the topic with the digitalization. As we are members of Horizon projects, few of them where we share the data. Mostly this is the imaging data and some demographics or health records. When we can create these prediction models, mostly in the cancer field. We do some bilateral collaboration with the companies such as Siemens. We recently started a new project with AI, trying to detect some pathologies in the chest. The others are also coming and requesting for data just to validate their artificial intelligence algorithms. So we say at the hospital level with the partnership, we are much more active when you compare from the national level. What we see are really the knowledge in the law field. This is a gap here. And there is talking a bit in the different languages from the national fields, from the hospital field, when they ask you just to say all the data what you have, give us a list. And then we're asking, just to do that, we need additional resources. Someone needs to sit, look at these information systems and make those lists. And then we can ask, maybe you can just make a more narrow question, maybe what exactly you're looking at. So that's why we're not moving forward. No financial resources for reimbursement of these specialties of these people. So I totally agree that could be also a limitation when we're not moving forward. So I think more and more collaboration, more speaking, more talking about what we need, and to move. Sometimes we miss some digital tools, but I think with the main work we can achieve these things.
Thank you very much. So, and it's obvious that competencies, knowledge, expertise is still like missing, because quite recent demand on sharing data because of law implementation just 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago. And of course, what you mentioned also, Professor, so this is about resources. And you have resources for hospital, for providing the best services for the patients, but it's obvious that you don't have additional resources that could support your data sharing projects.
That's absolutely true, because our main purpose is to serve to our community, to our patients. Nevertheless, the hospital is taking decisions. And when you take decision based on data, it's much more accurate. So it's also very important for us to have this data to run our hospital as well.
So then my question is just to everyone here. So data-driven decisions. So this is like trendy wording now, but when it could become a reality, or it will come a reality at all in Lithuania. So what are thoughts? I see Paulius.
Yeah, so I would think data-driven decisions is, decisions which are being made based on objective criteria and information which is available for the decision maker. So there are two sides on that. Yeah, one side is the quality of the data, and this is, I would not tire to mention that. That's really, we really need to. If we say data, most probably anybody who understands data, says, what are you talking about? So the quality, yes. So, and the other thing is that the person who gets the data has enough qualification to read that data. That's also another side, yes. So, and most probably if I have my own personal experience about that. I scanned my genome. I went to the doctor and said, look, can you do me a personalized follow-up plan? And the answer was like, no, because I cannot read the data. So that was okay. So I did the reading. I said, I explained how that works. What does it mean? So another thing, I cannot give you, how you say, referrals. Yeah. I said, why? Because, you can only get the referral if you are 50 and over or 40 and over for a specific program. And I said, wow, okay, I pay for that. And this was my kind of, eye-opening. We're speaking about the data-driven decisions, and we have no clue, and we have no infrastructure to follow on that. So this is where we are. And I think you really need to kind of put that all back and say, look, if we say A, there must be B. And it doesn't function in other way. So at least that's my take on that and experience.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So, and also referring to Professor Thomas shared experience. Again, same thing and what you Paulius said. So quality. So we need money to have better quality data that can be used for startups and for business, and we need competencies. So, but who pays for it? So, because I understood that for example, hospitals, they don't have resources, and this is huge limitation. So how we can overcome this and how we can find resources? Estonia did great projects. Maybe you could share some insights from Estonia.
I would say I'm sorry, I'm not that deep in Estonia. I just have some visiting there regularly there. I meet startups there, and I kind of know the ecosystem a little bit. Yeah, but I would say I kind of really love that me being in one of the Litban founding members, and Litban is Lithuanian Business Angel Association. Yes, so among business angels, there is a very good instrument. It's called syndication. Syndication, if nobody knows that, is the thing that we are here, and we have, basically you have a big, whale on the beach, and you know that you're not be able to eat it alone. So you invite your friends for the party, and you all eat the whale. Yeah. So that's the same story, and vice versa could be. Yes, you have a big hill. That means you have a big investment. You need to do a big thing, yes. So Kauno Klinikos can come and cry all the time, say we have no money, we have a little money, we cannot kill that kill, and we need to wait. Oh, please, ministry, give me that. So then Santariškės hears that Kauno Klinikos is doing that. They're kind of running to be the first and say, oh, we also want to have that. Please give us the money. And then ministry says, oh, we don't have money for that all. Yeah. I would say, guys, it's a syndication. So why not Santariškės, Klaipėda, Panevėžys, and I don't know, Kaunas comes together and say, look, we will all chip in. We will all chip in with some smaller budgets, but we will get the best solution available today on the market. So this is syndication, and I think that's the way. I believe, and this is, by the way, what had been done with this Estonian PACS system. Yes, they did this syndication because they had, look, guys, they said there's not enough money, so come up and put together cash, and then they bought the best system at that moment. So
Great.
Sure, of course I could add some things. You're not right. Of course, we have few ways, because you can just speak, but you also can do something. So through the external funding, you can attract some money for these projects, for some limited, of course, from the collaboration. As we do, of course, we do some small internal projects we fund, some in oncology, in other, just creating prediction models. I just would like to add from Paulius that we can't say that up to now, medicine was not personalized at all. Of course it is, because you always take your risk factors, labs, etc., medical history. Now we are moving to the another level, I think, with the genetics. So we can be more precise in risk assessment, or when we assessing the response to treatment. So that this is the new level. What is really new, that we are moving more to digitalization. That means we will be able to create this digital tools that will help you to predict immediately. Because when I say that I want to make something new as a prediction model, right? That means I can't ask doctor to work more, collecting different data, calculating. We need to implement everything internally in electronic health records, that the doctor will opens the window of the patient, and he will get all the prediction models that you have a risk to experience myocardial infarction in 10 years, 3%. Then I know what to do. Should I start primary prevention? Should I do the additional testing for you? So this is the point. I think we need to move more to digital solutions to help doctors to take data-driven, personalized decisions.
Okay, so thank you, but to move to digital solutions, we need data to create those solutions. So, and this about the same. So we need to accelerate unlocking potential of health data in Lithuania. And my question here, so thinking from like perspective of Estonia, for example, and also Paulius mentioned that we are close to jump in this last wagon. So, but I think we need to have this ambition. So then from perspective of business, law, also you, Professor, as director, healthcare provider and clinician and academia person, and from startups perspective. So what is like key actions each function needs to foster in order we get together to stakeholders who are making decisions on country strategy, and we start this strong discussion, because now it's obvious that we have quite siloed decisions, because Professor is sharing that you have some nice initiatives in clinics, most probably Vilnius Santariškės clinic, they also do something. Then we're hearing about startups, they founding the way how to create startups. We hear from big investor Paulius also great this practice, and as well as proposals and recommendations. So I think we need to join together this great experience, again, insights, and think how we can reach the upper level, not just to be below Estonia, but maybe to be enough competitive versus other countries in Central Eastern Europe and even Scandinavia. And I think we have quite good stage now, because as Paulius said, so we are living interesting time and great time for opportunities when many factors are driving this need for data value unlocking, starting with precision medicine and ending with our aging population in Lithuania. Because in the end of the day, everyone is patient, and in the end of the day, everyone is citizen of Lithuania, and we are socially responsible, and we want to live in the best country in the world. So, so this is like more like general question. So what could be next potential steps or necessary steps that we could really not to talk, but really start actioning solutions? Maybe I could ask Paulius.
Okay.
And audience also very welcome. I see also Povilas is raising. Povilas.
I have a very specific question.
Povilas is representing Lithuania Atopic Dermatitis Patient Association. So
Hello. I have a very specific question to Thomas. So Kaunas Clinics was invited to participate in an EDEN program that provides basically funding and resources, technical resources to be able to form a tool to provide cohorts from your hospital information system, and to participate in that with the network partners on clinical research. How's that project going? I think that invitation was about a year ago.
It never started, you know that. Because at the time, probably the main answer would be not enough knowledge and competencies dedicated to the project. So that's the main reason. If that would be the question today, maybe the process would be in a different way.
You can apply again. They provide the application every year.
Coming to the question you mentioned, first of all, I really want to say one more thing is that notwithstanding all impression you might have from what I'm talking, Lithuania is still in very good condition on e-health and medical data in Europe. So that's what we should keep in mind. But my key message here is that the train is going. So, you know, if we want to bring value, and if we really want to kind of squeeze max out of it, what we can do being small, we need to move fast and we need to make the right decisions. So how to do that and what's the idea? It's a really tough question. I think, you know, it's maybe not very popular with medical institutions, could be, yeah. But I would say we really need to hang a huge pot of money, which is accessible only if the institutions come together.
Thank you.
I would say that would be, it's not the point, because first of all, we need to have initiative from the lower levels to move forward, because they should be really formatting the strategy for the personalized care. Yes, not statistical departments, not some other institutions, but really the people who are dealing with the patients. But at the same time, we need to be as big as possible due to the data value of the cohorts and of the information. So I would say there must be a big carrot to get these decision makers together and fast.
So syndication.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, me too. So and yeah, so please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dominikas. I'm a co-founder of a startup that really wants genomic data. And I'm also a venture partner with a venture capital fund. So recently, someone pitched me a model of a European country, which I shall not name, that gathered all of the biggest hospitals in one room and forced them to establish a fund where every hospital in the biggest city is a shareholder in that fund, that then gets the right to deal with medical data, and any revenue gotten from those medical data and involvement in trials and so on is then shared equally among the shareholders. So a curveball question to the panelists today is, do you think this model is possible in Lithuania? Can the biggest hospitals come together and make a business out of our data?
Let's hope that the greed is really the driving force.
Who's gonna take the answering?
Maybe you, Thomas.
If I could compare the level of development of electronic health record system between different hospitals, I think it's a bit different. And what we have in Kaunas clinics, that's one information system. In Santara, they do have another one. In the smaller hospitals, they do have from another provider. So then we need to think how we're gonna take this data. So do we need, and who will be responsible for that data? Because there's a sensitive question that when we start to do common projects and we are starting to negotiate, will be the general database who will be responsible for that. And so that I can say we can go home because if we not agree. So maybe everything could go to the national level, and then everyone can access that, as you told, and doing research, take the decision to make any other things. So from my perspective, it's possible, but the decision will come from the boards of the hospitals.
Okay. Clear, but I think also, overall, it's everything, about value, because each stakeholder has different understanding on value. And I think progress could be made and could happen in case every stakeholder has value from it.
And I also can add something from legal perspective, let's say from legal regulation. So of course that is possible, and there are some legal instruments for that. For example, joint controllership. So those stakeholders, they can take activities based on joint controllership. So from legal perspective, it's also possible.
Now I'm looking to Monica. She represents business and startups. So Monica, what would be your advice? You are from young generation, but you did already quite great projects and you have experience. You shared even your challenges and how you overcame them, and also some recommendations, key advices. So what would be your perspective?
That's a great question. I think first of all, from my personal experience, how we did get national funding for diabetic devices that are improving lives with moving towards direction of artificial pancreas, which is really the most important technology for managing the diabetes. We had to have responsible people of the community every single day go to politicians and kind of give them headaches, daily headaches. And obviously providing them not only with research, but with numbers of how that technology that would be brought to the country, how it would actually in a long term improve healthcare system, reduce the costs. And I think that's the way we have to go probably, because as I understand, nobody wants to take on this project right now.
Okay, thank you. So, and it is really interesting discussion, and we have great time here. But to conclude, time to conclude, and I think that from where we need to start. So first of all, I think to share, to crystallize, and to understand the value, and to speak the language to each stakeholder that defines in the best way the value stakeholder can get from healthcare data. I think this is a key. And we are in the beginning of the journey, I would say at the beginning of the journey, but many things to do. And I believe that Health Morning Talks need to think about continuing consistently those initiatives, calling together different stakeholders from the healthcare system, from business, in order to have those insights, best practice sharings, and also working on the solutions for the future. So thank you everyone for today's participation, and especially panelists for your great insights and recommendations, and also your vision sharing, because vision is that we want to be not the last ones jumping into wagon of health data. So thank you very much. And with that, I would like to thank you organizers again.